What is up, everybody? Kim Becker and Drew Kreisman right back here for your Colorado Rockies AMA. Spring training is still underway down in Scottsdale, Arizona. Drew, we definitely have a few things to chat about here. The Rockies are making some moves already, which is good, obviously, after the bummer news that we heard about Rogers last week. So going to dive into some questions here that fans sent in. And the first one is, do you have a favorite under-the-radar prospect that you think has a chance to make the opening day roster?
Yeah, this is a great one, and then like you were just saying, spots are a little more open now. There's a little bit of wandering on the position player side. It's still going to be a little bit tight, and I think the names that we know are still the guys in it. I've mentioned Brenton Doyle a couple of times before as a potential new player, deeper prospect you might not have thought of. I think he right now has got the best chance. In fact, I think he's got a pretty good chance to make the opening day roster. So that's pretty great on that side for him. Deeper than that, probably not. I know there are people out there rooting for guys like Coco Montez to prove that maybe they can take over the middle infield spot or something like that. But I don't think that's very likely. On the other side, though, on the pitching side, is where you've got a lot of really interesting candidates, where it's almost the opposite problem, where there's too many to name. Some of these guys may not quite qualify under prospect as much as young-ish player that still has plenty to prove. But I'm thinking of guys like Noah Davis and Connor Siebold, those guys, or even Peter Lambert, who we've seen at the big league level very briefly. It feels like 8 years ago. And then there was a pandemic and Tommy John surgery and another injury, all the things that have happened since the last time we saw young Mr. Lambert. And he's been out there pitching a lot, had some ups and downs so far this spring training. So, I think he might be, though, able to grab that fifth rotation spot, especially in a year like this, which is going to mean for some ups and downs for him and the team probably. And if it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well. But those are the guys I think could potentially make it as deeper prospects. The people still hoping for Zach Veen or Drew Romo, who feel like they're a little further away. Keep hoping. I'm not gonna tell you not to hope.
Have faith. Be positive, people, right? Optimism is always nice.
Right. Yeah, this time of year anyway.
This time of year. Is there anybody, this is kind of a follow-up question just for me, is there anybody that's been standing out in spring training that you weren't expecting to stand out? Maybe not necessarily going to make the opening day roster, but any potential names that people should still keep their eyes on?
Yeah, there have been a couple. I mentioned Coco Montez a minute ago. He's somebody who I don't like this phrase, but I know that people know what it means, so I'm going to use it here. It's someone I've thought is maybe a quadruple A player, right? One of those guys who very, very good minor league numbers, great production, but I don't see the skill set there to translate to the bigs. For those of you who followed very closely last season, you remember a player named Winton Bernard, who for a little while was kind of making a joke of AAA. Like, he was one of the best players in the entire league, but the bigs are a different animal. It's a different beast, and not everyone's skill set is going to translate. That said, you play well enough, or for those of you that remember maybe a more famous example of this, Nolan Arenado's cousin, Joshua Fuentes, had a phenomenal minor league career. So much so that people were like, you gotta play him. You gotta play him. And then they played him. And sometimes that's how that goes. I would hope that Montez, if given the opportunity, maybe he blossoms and becomes an all-star this team never knew they had, that no one was ever looking at, that all the prospect evaluators missed. You never know.
Okay.
But he's someone who showed up. That's a really good question, because him and there's a veteran named Harold Castro that they picked up. He's like 30 or something. He's never been super great for the Detroit Tigers, but he's batting like 600 in spring. I'm just like, well, okay, I'll pay attention to that for a little while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, that's exciting. All right. Our next one here, obviously the moves that have been made with Moustakas, which people have some opinions about. But with the addition of him on the roster now, which one are you sending down, Jones or Montero?
Yeah, this is a tough question, and I know that a lot of people, like you said, are very frustrated about this. Now, let me be clear. I would not have made this move if I was running things. I don't see a ton of upside to bringing in Mike Moustakas, who, by the way, is a player I've liked for a very long time.
Yeah.
It would have fit perfectly on the 2017 and 2018 Rockies,
Right.
but it's not then anymore. One thing I do see, though, and I wrote about this on milehighsports.com, was there's not enough everyday plate appearances to go around for both Elauris Montero and Nolan Jones.
Mhm.
And you need both of those guys getting everyday plate appearances. As much as we want to say, hey, he belongs on the big league roster, sitting on the bench doesn't do either of these players a lot of good.
Yeah.
One of them needs to go to AAA and get everyday at bats. If you bring in Moustakas and only play him as a backup, and your primary third baseman, with McMahon sliding over to second, has to be one of these two guys. The other one, I think, needs all of the at-bats. If it was up to me, I've always been a big believer in Montero. I think he has the biggest upside. I think he has the most ceiling. He's not quite as polished as Jones is at this point of his career. And Jones is the better defender and a left-handed bat, which, frankly, the Rockies really need that left-handed bat.
Okay.
But it's not a competitive season. You don't worry about right, left when you're going to win 68 games. So again, the question was, who would I send down? I would send Nolan Jones down with the understanding that he's I used to use the old Top Gun reference. Maybe it's back now because there's new Top Gun, but does anybody remember Ready on Alert 5? You got to be ready on Alert 5, man. They need someone that can call on the phone and say, Maverick, you're in,
Yeah.
So.
Which is not a bad place to be, not necessarily. I mean, if you get that experience, you get the reps, and then you're ready to go. And you never know what's going to happen. We've already seen things happen in spring training that we weren't expecting. So it's just kind of one of those things. But all right, some good insight there. This next question, Ryan McMahon is having a nice spring. Could he make the jump and become a potential all-star caliber player this year? And what does his versatility provide to this Colorado Rockies team?
Yeah. Okay, so for the 5th year in a row, I'm going to predict that Ryan McMahon finally makes his first All-Star team.
Time's charm.
This one is tough for me, and I do have to admit a certain bias because I met Ryan McMahon when he was 18 years old, straight out of high school at Grand Junction, rookie level, and he'd been there for a week and a half, and he already had an incredible head on his shoulders, an advanced mind for the game, a feel for the game, and obviously raw ability that was coming out of his ears. The guy was a quarterback in high school. He's one of those just supreme athletes. Everyone loves him in the clubhouse. One of those dudes, if you will. Now, he's proven he's an elite defender in Major League Baseball. A couple of Gold Glove nominees. Now, he's not going to win it because of that other guy. But he's an elite defender at 2 different spots. And the fact that the Rockies can just so casually say, hey, move your elite defense over to second base is incredible to the question about versatility here. But it's baseball, and everyone wants to see you hit close to 300 and smash 30 home runs. Otherwise, you're not a star player. And to be fair, his offense has basically stagnated at league average for the last couple of years. And lots of people, myself included, have long believed there's a lot more in there out of McMahon. He's still got to bring the strikeouts down a little bit. He's got to be more consistent at the plate. He can be very streaky at times. But I try not to count out guys who are really smart because so much of hitting is a mind game. And he does have all of the natural athleticism. Like, there's nothing that you can't teach that Ryan McMahon doesn't have. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so the rest of it is all about whether or not he can be taught or he can teach himself all the proper mechanics so that his swing gets to the place where he can be the kind of hitter that his natural talent suggests he can be. And that's, why pitching gurus make big dollars out there and hitting gurus make big dollars out there in the off season with these guys at their private camps, because the mechanics of a swing are magic to me.
A lot of technicality makes a difference. For sure. Okay, awesome. We've got one more question here. Then I definitely want to get some of your takeaways just of spring training thus far, maybe what we have to look forward to in the next couple of weeks here. But the last question is there any buzz with the WBC? We're not hearing much of anything from anyone on socials. Would have figured it to be a bigger deal since it's been 6 years since the previous one.
Yeah, this is an interesting lull, I think, that we're in, where maybe it's like the novelty of it being brand new has worn off a little bit. And I think the delay hurt a little bit too. People sort of forgot about it. And I don't think baseball fans are as conditioned to this thing as, say, basketball fans are. Right. Certainly, I don't know, soccer fans. I don't know it super well, but following Welcome to Wrexham and all of that, you learn things. And these guys will play on a bunch of different. So you're used to kind of seeing the internationality of it. And I've gotten to the point where I forget which players are even playing on which international team in
Yeah.
baseball, right? And um, it's too bad because the game is so international and there is so much great talent from all of these countries around the world. But I do think, first of all, it's weirdly timed, at
Yeah.
least in terms of the Major League Baseball season. I can't
Right.
speak to if it works for everybody else, but right now is a very strange time to be playing different baseball.
Yes.
So I don't know when the ideal time would be for it because you need the weather to cooperate. You can't do it in the middle of the season because guys aren't going to lose their players. But
Mhm.
yeah, with not quite as many star players going as usual, it's almost become like the NFL Pro Bowl where
Yeah.
any little injury and you're out. You're not
Yeah.
gonna, you got a hangnail. You're not going to the World Baseball Classic, right?
Yep.
So I understand all of that. I think it's too bad because I'll watch any baseball, man. I'll watch high school baseball. I love baseball,
Yeah.
but the World Baseball Classic has an opportunity to
Yeah.
be incredible. I'm not an expert on how to make it that
Yeah.
I wish I knew the answer, but I hope people will continue to have interest in it and they can figure out a way to make it grow
Yeah.
because like seeing things like the other night with like Shohei Ohtani, who doesn't want to see Shohei Ohtani
Right.
and hit
Right.
Japan into the finals or whatever, right? That's
Totally.
incredible stuff.
I think you're right with the timing thing. And there really is never an opportune time for any of these types of games in any sport because, of course, you mentioned the Pro Bowl in the NFL. Well, none of those players want to even like play their half of their hardest because they don't want to get hurt for the real season. And that's what's a bummer about it. It's like you want to have it at the end of the year, at the end of the season. Obviously, it's not going to work out so well at the end of the MLB season, kind of being in those winter months really in the thick of it. But at the end of the day, I have been to Japan. You mentioned Shohei Ohtani and the Japanese team. I've been to Japan. Baseball is out of this world in Japan. I mean,
Yeah.
they love it. You will find people in every single country that loves baseball. So I agree with you. There's so much opportunity to get people to watch their teams, to watch their countries be represented. And so I think it just really is a timing thing. They need to figure that out. But I don't know what the answer is either. So I'm no solution here. I'm just tacking on to your opinion. I totally agree with you. But it is a sport that is so respected worldwide.
Yeah, you got me thinking there because you mentioned maybe end of the season or something. I thought, and I was like, you know what, that's what they should do because then the guys who won't play, anyone who's in the postseason,
They
okay,
don't play. Right.
we're already not getting a decent chunk of players anyway. All
Yeah.
the Rockies will be eligible to play every year, so no problem there. We'll get to watch our guys in the
True.
baseball. They won't be busy,
Yeah.
but no, like anybody, the weather is still cooperative enough that you
Yeah.
can play that time of year, and half the players in baseball, a little more than, will be eligible, right?
Yeah.
So I would prefer that because then at
Yeah.
least your guys aren't worried about banging themselves going
No.
into a season or
Totally.
whatever. It's just like,
The start of the season really makes no sense. And in the middle of spring training also, it's like, well, that's where you go to jive with your team, to understand like the chemistry of who's going to be, wearing that same jersey that you are in also. It doesn't make sense to have it right now. I definitely think it's a big timing thing there. But before we wrap this one up, Drew, I just want to get your main takeaways from spring training. It's been a week since we've done this one. The Rockies have played several games. What do you feel differently this week than maybe you did last Thursday when we last spoke?
yeah, there have been some of the bad pitching has started to rear its
So,
ugly head, and
okay.
that's as we're one of the main things I've been trying to do this spring training is sift through who of these pitchers are going to end up filling out the last couple of rotation
Mm,
spots and the bullpen. And you look at like a list of 15 or something candidates,
yeah.
and almost all of them who've pitched, it's been one good game, one bad game, or one okay game, one fairly disastrous game. Austin Gomber is a perfect example of this, who um, his first out, he had a terrible season last year. So you really wanted him to see him get off to a good start this year. And then his first game out of the blocks this spring training, just awful. Just it couldn't have been worse. I think it was like 5 runs, recorded 1 out, right? But then his next time out, much, much better. Okay, but I don't know what to do with that, right? So we're the bad news about the pitching appears to still be the bad news, but the other good side, the flip side is, and it is still just things that are still happening from before, but it's worth pointing out the young guys are doing their thing.
Mhm.
Zach Veen I had the Mariners broadcast on the other day because they were the ones that had the broadcast
Yeah.
on, and Zach Veen was just stealing bases all over him, and they started waxing poetic about this guy, saying he's going to steal 70 bases, and the guy sitting next to him says 70 bases, he's going to have that by the All-Star break,
Wow.
right? It's so when you've got a guy like that who's like getting the other team's broadcasters excited,
Yeah.
that's when you know you've got something special on your hands. So seeing him, especially in this new environment where, oh man, maybe we'll do more next time on all the rules stuff and guys stealing bases and the pitch clock. It gets weirder and weirder every day.
Yeah.
But we're gonna see people stealing 70, 80, 90 bases
Wow.
in a season again, because the new rules just make it so that after a couple of pickoff attempts, guys can essentially just get a running start and take the base. It's going to be wild, but that's been fun to watch also.
Okay.
Just this new, more exciting brand of baseball. I'm into it.
You are? Okay.
I am. There's certain elements of the pitch clock that I can't believe they're doing. As I've tried to say before, it's about the implementation of the rule for me more than the actual rule. Some of this stuff is silly nonsense and it has to be changed and ironed out. But the end result of games being snappier, get them on the mound, I'm good with all of that. And the running the bases and base hits, it's refreshing.
You're into it. Okay, that was good, because I was going to ask, what was your gut reaction about, like, your feeling about these rule changes, though? Are you into it or you're not? But you answered that one right there. We'll dive into maybe more of the details on these rule changes and how they're affecting the teams in spring training and the Colorado Rockies specifically next week. But Drew, I appreciate it. Some great insight here as spring training gets going. I know we've got a long season ahead of us, and I know it might be a long one in other terms for us for the Colorado Rockies, but hey, we're keeping it fun and we really appreciate your insight. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.